Isla's fingers tightened around her daughter's hand as they crossed the threshold into the royal packhouse. The stone walls rose higher than any building she'd ever entered. The air smelled of pine and power, and something else she couldn't name. Her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. She didn't belong here. 6 months ago she'd had a mate. A home. A place in the world. Now she had only Maya, her 4-year-old daughter, and the clothes they'd carried in a single worn bag. "Mama, it's big," Maya whispered, pressing against her leg. "I know, sweetheart." A woman in dark robes approached, her expression polite but distant. "You're the widow from the southern border?" Isla nodded. "Isla Brennan, this is my daughter Maya. Follow me. The Alpha King will see you shortly." They walked through corridors lined with portraits of wolves and warriors. Isla kept her gaze low. She knew what she was. What they saw when they looked at her. A charity case. Her mate had died defending the border from rogues. No body recovered. No honor ceremony. Just a notification delivered by a junior scout, and a suggestion that she petition the royal house for shelter. She'd put it off for months. Pride, maybe, or fear. But winter was coming, and Maya needed more than a drafty cabin, and Isla's dwindling savings could provide. The escort led them into a vast hall with high windows that poured light across polished floors. At the far end, a man stood with his back to them, shoulders broad beneath a dark shirt, hands clasped behind him. Even from a distance, Isla felt the weight of his presence. "Alpha." Her wolf dropped low, instinct curling her spine. The woman cleared her throat. "Your Majesty, the petitioner has arrived." He turned slowly. Isla's breath caught. She'd heard stories about Kael the Alpha King. Ruthless in battle. Fair in judgment. Cold since his wife's death 3 years prior. No one had mentioned the storm in his eyes. Dark gray, sharp as winter steel. His jaw was clean cut, his hair black and cropped short. He looked like a man carved from stone, except for the faint exhaustion shadowing his gaze. He didn't smile. "Isla Brennan," he said. His voice was low, controlled. "You've requested sanctuary." "For my daughter and myself. Yes, Your Majesty." His eyes flicked to Maya, then back to Isla. "Your mate served in the Border Patrol." "He did. He died 6 months ago." It wasn't a question. He'd already reviewed her file. "Yes," Isla said quietly. Kael's expression didn't shift. "We have quarters available in the East Wing. You'll work in the kitchens or the gardens. Your daughter will attend the pack school." Relief flooded her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Thank you, Your Majesty." He nodded once, already turning away. "My steward will—" "Papa!" A small voice rang through the hall. Isla turned as a blur of dark hair and bright eyes came racing across the floor. A boy, no older than 6, barreled past the escort and stopped 3 feet from Isla. He stared up at her, breathing hard, his little face flushed. "Rowan," Kael said sharply. "What are you doing here?" The boy ignored him. His gaze locked on Isla, wide and wondering, and something flickered in his expression. Something Isla couldn't name. "You're sad," Rowan whispered. Isla blinked. What?" "You're sad. I can feel it." Her heart twisted. She crouched slowly, meeting the boy's eyes. "I'm all right, sweetheart." "No, you're not." His voice was soft, certain. "You lost someone." Tears pricked the corners of her eyes before she could stop them. Maya peeked out from behind Isla's leg, curious. Rowan glanced at her, then back at Isla. "Is that your daughter?" "Yes. Her name is Maya." "I'm Rowan." He reached out and took Isla's hand. His palm was small and warm. "You're going to stay here, right?" Yes. For a while." "Good." He nodded firmly. "I want you to stay." "Rowan?" Kael's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "That's enough." The boy's fingers tightened around Isla's. But Papa. Now! Rowan's face crumpled, but he didn't let go. Isla gently squeezed his hand, then released it. It's all right. I'll see you again. Promise? She hesitated, glancing at Kael. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. Promise, she said softly. Rowan smiled, a bright, relieved smile that made her chest ache, and finally stepped back. Kael motioned to the escort. Show them to their quarters. He didn't look at Isla again. But as the woman led them toward the corridor, Isla glanced back. Kael was crouched beside his son, speaking in a low voice. Rowan's face was stubborn, his little arms crossed. And then Rowan looked up, straight at Isla, and waved. She waved back, her throat tight. Maya tugged her hand. Mama, he's nice. Yes, he is. Is he going to be our friend? Isla didn't know how to answer that. She followed the escort down the corridor, her pulse still unsteady. She'd expected cold formality, distant authority. She hadn't expected a child to look at her like she mattered. And she hadn't expected the Alpha King's gaze to linger on her face just a second too long, as if he'd seen something that unsettled him. The quarters were small but clean. 2 beds, a window overlooking the gardens, a private washroom. More than she'd had in months. Maya climbed onto one of the beds, bouncing lightly. I like it here. Isla set their bag down and exhaled slowly. She should feel relief. Instead, she felt the weight of Kael's stare and the warmth of Rowan's small hand in hers. She didn't belong here, but maybe, just for a while, she could stay. A knock sounded at the door. Isla opened it to find the same escort, her expression carefully neutral. The Alpha King requests that you keep your distance from his son. Isla's stomach dropped. I didn't. He's aware, but the prince has difficulties. He becomes attached easily. It's better if you don't encourage it. The woman left before Isla could respond. Isla closed the door and leaned against it, her chest tight. She'd done nothing wrong. But she understood. A grieving widow. A lonely child. Of course Kael would be wary. She wouldn't push. She'd stay quiet, work hard, and keep Maya safe. That was all she'd come here to do. But as she looked out the window at the sprawling grounds below, she couldn't shake the image of Rowan's eyes, wide and earnest and full of hope. Or the way Kael's gaze had lingered on her face, like he was trying to solve a problem he didn't want to acknowledge. Isla woke to the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. The sky through the window was pale gray, dawn barely breaking. Maya slept curled beside her, one small fist clutching the edge of the blanket. For a moment, Isla let herself breathe. They were safe, fed, warm. It was more than she'd dared hope for. Then the knock came. Sharp, deliberate. Isla slipped out of bed and opened the door a crack. Kael stood in the corridor, still dressed in yesterday's clothes. His expression unreadable. Her pulse jumped. Your Majesty, she said quietly, stepping into the hall and pulling the door closed behind her. Is something wrong? We need to talk. His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge beneath it. Isla nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. All right, he gestured down the corridor. Walk with me. She hesitated, glancing back at the door. Your daughter is safe, Kael said. There are guards on this floor. Isla followed him down the hall, her bare feet silent on the stone. The pack house was still quiet, most of its residents still asleep. Kael led her to a small sitting room overlooking the eastern gardens. He closed the door and turned to face her, his arms crossed. My son didn't sleep last night. Isla's stomach tightened. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. He asked about you 17 times. Kael's jaw flexed. He wanted to know where you were. If you were safe. if you'd left." She swallowed. "I don't understand why." "Neither do I." His gaze locked on hers, sharp and searching. "So I'm asking you, what did you do?" "Nothing," Isla said softly. "I spoke to him for a few minutes. That's all." "That's all," Kael repeated, his tone flat. "And now he won't stop talking about you. He's never done this before." "Done what?" "Attached." The word came out hard. "Rowan doesn't connect easily. He hasn't since his mother died." Isla's chest tightened. "I didn't do anything to encourage him, I promise." Kael took a step closer, and her wolf stirred beneath her skin, instinct recognizing the power rolling off him in waves. "Then why?" he said quietly. "Does my son look at you like you're the answer to something I can't even name?" She didn't know what to say. Kael's eyes searched hers, and for a moment, she saw something flicker behind the steel, something raw and uncertain. "I lost my mate 6 months ago," Isla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't plan to come here. I didn't want to. But I had no choice." "I know," his voice softened just a fraction. "I read your file. Then you know I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need a place where my daughter can be safe." Kael exhaled slowly, his shoulders still tense. "And my son?" "I was kind to him," Isla said. "That's all. If you want me to stay away from him, I will." "I don't know what I want." The admission came out rough, almost unwilling. "He's been distant since Lena died. He barely speaks to anyone outside his tutors. And then you walk in and he trailed off, shaking his head." Isla waited, her pulse unsteady. "He hasn't smiled like that in 3 years," Kael said finally. Her throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." His gaze lifted to hers, and something in his expression shifted. "I just need to understand what's happening." "So do I." For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of grief and confusion hanging between them. Then the door burst open. Rowan came running in, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles. "Papa?" He stopped when he saw Isla, his face lighting up. "You're still here." "Rowan," Kael said sharply, "I told you to stay in your room." "But I wanted to make sure she didn't leave." Rowan crossed the room and grabbed Isla's hand, his grip fierce. "You didn't leave." Isla crouched, meeting his eyes. "I promised I'd stay. Remember? People break promises." The sadness in his voice made her chest ache. "I won't," she said gently. "Not to you." Rowan stared at her for a long moment, as if testing the weight of her words. Then he nodded, his shoulders relaxing. "Okay." Kael's expression was unreadable, but Isla felt the tension radiating off him. "Rowan," he said quietly, "go back to your room. I'll come check on you in a few minutes." "But now." Rowan's face fell, but he squeezed Isla's hand one more time before letting go. "You'll still be here later?" he asked. "Yes," Isla said softly. "I will." He smiled. Small, hopeful, and walked slowly toward the door. Kael watched him go, his jaw tight. When the door closed, he turned back to Isla. "He doesn't trust easily," Kael said. "Not anymore." "I understand." "Do you?" His voice was low, almost dangerous. "Because I don't. I don't understand why my son feels safe with a stranger. I don't understand why he's asking for you. And I don't understand." He stopped, his gaze dropping to the floor. "What?" Isla asked quietly. Kael's eyes lifted to hers, and for the first time, she saw the exhaustion beneath the steel. "I don't understand why I feel like I need to keep you close." Her breath caught. "I don't know you," he continued, his voice rough. "I don't trust this, but my instincts are telling me something I can't ignore." Isla's pulse hammered in her throat. "What are they telling you?" Kael took a step closer, and the air between them thickened. "That you matter," he said quietly. "And I don't know why." She couldn't speak. His gaze held hers, intense and searching, and, for a moment, the grief and the distance fell away. Then he stepped back, his expression shuddering. "Stay," he said, "for now. But if Rowan's attachment becomes a problem, I'll keep my distance," Isla said softly. "I promise." Kael nodded once, then turned and walked toward the door. But before he left, he paused, his hand on the frame. "Isla, yes?" He didn't look back. "Thank you for being kind to him." Then he was gone. Isla stood alone in the sitting room, her chest tight and her thoughts spinning. She'd expected formality, distance. She hadn't expected Kael's walls to crack, just enough to show the grief underneath. And she hadn't expected the pull she felt when he stood close, the way her wolf stirred and settled at the same time. She didn't belong here, but maybe, just maybe, she was meant to. Back in their quarters, Maya was awake, sitting up in bed and rubbing her eyes. "Where did you go, Mama?" "Just for a walk," Isla said, sitting beside her. Maya climbed into her lap, warm and small. "Is the nice boy going to visit us?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope he does. He seemed lonely." Isla pressed a kiss to her daughter's hair, her throat tight. She'd come here to survive, but now she wasn't sure what she'd walked into. Outside, the sun rose over the gardens, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. And somewhere in the pack house, a lonely boy was smiling. And a grieving king was wondering why his world had just shifted, all because of a widow with kind eyes and a daughter who needed shelter. Isla spent the morning in the gardens, pulling weeds alongside two other women who barely spoke to her. She didn't mind the silence. It gave her time to think, and to push down the memory of Kael's gaze locked on hers. Maya played nearby, chasing butterflies and humming to herself. Safe. Content. That was all that mattered. By midday, Isla's hands were dirt-streaked and her back ached, but the work felt good. Solid. Real. Then Maya tugged her sleeve. "Mama, he's here." Isla looked up. Rowan stood at the edge of the garden path, clutching a small wooden horse in one hand. His tutor, a stern-faced woman in gray, stood a few paces behind him, arms crossed. "I told him he shouldn't interrupt your work," the tutor said flatly, "but he insisted." Isla wiped her hands on her skirt and walked over, crouching to Rowan's level. "Is everything all right?" He nodded, but his eyes were too serious for a 6-year-old. "I wanted to see you." "I'm right here," Isla said gently. "I know." But he glanced at his tutor, then lowered his voice. "Can Maya come play with me? Just for a little while?" Isla hesitated, glancing at the tutor. The woman's expression didn't shift. "The prince has an hour before his next lesson." "Please?" Rowan asked, his voice so earnest it made her chest ache. Maya peeked out from behind Isla's leg, hopeful. "All right," Isla said softly, "but you have to listen to your tutor, and Maya has to stay where I can see her." "I will, I promise." The two children ran off toward a shaded corner of the garden, and the tutor followed at a measured distance. Isla returned to the flower bed, but her gaze kept drifting to where Rowan and Maya were building something out of sticks and stones. They were laughing. Both of them. It was the first time Isla had heard Maya laugh like that since her father died. "Careful." Isla turned. One of the other women, older, with silver streaking her dark hair, was watching her with sharp eyes. "Careful of what?" Isla asked quietly. "The prince." The woman's voice was low. "He's fragile. The Alpha King doesn't let anyone close to him. If you get in the way of that..." "I'm not trying to get in the way of anything." "Maybe not. But that boy's already attached to you. I've seen it before. Someone gets close, the king shuts it down, and the person who tried ends up reassigned." She paused. "Or worse." Isla's stomach tightened. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Doesn't matter. Just watch yourself." The woman turned back to her work, leaving Isla's chest tight with unease. She glanced at Rowan again. He was showing Maya how to stack the stones, his face bright with concentration. Isla's wolf stirred, uneasy. She should pull back, keep her distance. But how could she, when a lonely boy looked at her like she was the first safe thing he'd found in years? That night, Isla tucked Maya into bed and sat by the window, watching the stars emerge over the packhouse grounds. The room was quiet. Peaceful. Then she heard it. A soft knock at the door. Isla frowned and opened it a crack. Rowan stood in the hallway, barefoot and trembling, his eyes red-rimmed. "Rowan!" Isla whispered, crouching. "What's wrong?" "I had a nightmare," he said, his voice breaking. "And Papa's in a meeting, and I didn't know where else to go." Her heart twisted. She glanced down the corridor. Empty. "Come here," she said softly, guiding him inside. He followed without hesitation, his small body tense. Isla led him to the chair by the window and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "Do you want to talk about it?" He shook his head, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "That's okay. You don't have to." For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Rowan's voice came, barely a whisper. "I dreamed my mama came back, but when I tried to hug her, she disappeared." Isla's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Do you dream about your mate?" She hesitated. "Sometimes." "Does it hurt?" "Yes," Isla said quietly. "It does." Rowan looked up at her, his eyes too old for his age. "Papa says it gets easier. But it doesn't feel easier." "It takes time," Isla said gently. "And it's okay to be sad." He nodded slowly, then leaned against her shoulder. Isla stroked his hair, her chest aching. Maya stirred in her bed, then sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Mama." "It's all right, sweetheart. Rowan just needed some company." Maya climbed out of bed and padded over, sitting on the floor beside Rowan's chair. "I have bad dreams too sometimes." Rowan looked at her, surprised. "You do?" "Yeah. But Mama says if I think about happy things before I sleep, it helps." "Does it work?" Rowan asked. Maya shrugged. "Sometimes." Rowan's lips twitched, almost a smile. Isla's wolf settled, something warm and protective curling through her chest. Then the door opened. Kael stood in the doorway, his expression hard. Isla's breath caught. "Rowan," Kael said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What are you doing here?" Rowan shrank back. I had a nightmare." "So you came here?" Kael's gaze cut to Isla. "Instead of coming to me?" "I tried," Rowan said, his voice trembling. "But you were in a meeting and the guards said I couldn't." "That's enough." Kael stepped into the room and the air seemed to thicken around him. "Go back to your room, now." Rowan's eyes filled with tears. "Papa, now." Isla stood slowly, keeping her voice calm. "Your Majesty." He was frightened. "I didn't think it would hurt to." "You didn't think." Kael's gaze locked on hers, and the weight of his authority pressed down like a physical force. "You let my son into your quarters in the middle of the night without informing anyone." "He was upset," Isla said quietly. "I wasn't going to turn him away." "That's not your decision to make." His voice was cold, but beneath it, Isla heard something else. Fear. "You're right," she said softly. "I should have sent someone to find you. I'm sorry." Kael's jaw flexed. Rowan stood, the blanket slipping from his shoulders. "Papa, please don't be mad at her. I just wanted—" His voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands. Kael's expression cracked, just for a second. He crossed the room and crouched beside his son, his hand resting on Rowan's shoulder. "I'm not angry at you." "Yes, you are," Rowan whispered. "No, Kael exhaled slowly. "I'm scared." "That's different." Rowan looked up, his face streaked with tears. Scared of what? Of losing you. Kael's voice was low, rough. You're all I have left. Isla's throat tightened, and she turned away, giving them space. Maya climbed back into bed, watching quietly. After a long moment, Kael stood, lifting Rowan into his arms. Come on, let's get you back to bed. Rowan nodded, resting his head on his father's shoulder. But before Kael reached the door, he paused and looked back at Isla. I didn't manipulate him, Isla said quietly. I promise. Kael's gaze held hers, and for a moment, the hard lines of his face softened. I know, he said finally. Then he carried his son into the corridor and disappeared. Isla closed the door and leaned against it, her chest tight. Maya's small voice broke the silence. Is he going to make us leave? I don't know, sweetheart. I don't want to leave. I like it here. Isla crossed to the bed and pulled Maya close. We'll stay as long as we can. Do you think the king is sad like Rowan? Isla thought of the exhaustion in Kael's eyes, the way his voice had cracked when he said he was scared. Yes, she said softly. I think he is. Maybe we can help him too. Isla kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart aching. Maybe, but as she lay beside Maya in the dark, listening to the quiet sounds of the pack house settling for the night, she couldn't shake the image of Kael's face. The way he looked at her, like he wanted to trust her but didn't know how, like he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't name. And Isla realized she was standing on that same edge. Isla woke to the sound of raised voices in the corridor. She sat up, her pulse already racing, and glanced at Maya's bed. Her daughter slept on, one arm flung over her pillow. The voices grew louder. Isla slipped out of bed and cracked the door open. 2 guards stood at the end of the hall, speaking in clipped tones. A third man, dressed in the dark uniform of the Border Patrol, was gesturing sharply. How close did he get? One of the guards asked. Within a quarter mile of the inner grounds. We only caught him because he triggered the northern perimeter wards. Isla's stomach dropped. Rogues. She knew that threat too well. One of the guards noticed her and motioned for her to close the door. She obeyed, her hands trembling. Maya stirred. Mama? It's all right, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. But Isla couldn't. She paced the small room, her wolf restless beneath her skin, every instinct screaming danger. Then the knock came, firm and deliberate. She opened the door to find Kael standing in the corridor, his expression carved from stone. Get dressed, he said. Both of you, now. What's happening? Isla asked. We had a breach. A rogue scout was captured near the border. His gaze locked on hers. He was carrying a map. Your quarters were marked. Her blood ran cold. Why would? I don't know yet. Kael's voice was hard, controlled. But until I do, you're staying close. Pack what you need. You're moving to the secured wing. For how long? As long as it takes. He turned to leave, then paused. 5 minutes. No more. Isla nodded, her throat tight, and closed the door. Maya was awake now, her eyes wide. Mama, what's wrong? We're gonna stay somewhere safer for a little while, Isla said, keeping her voice calm. Can you help me pack? Maya nodded and climbed out of bed. Isla's hands shook as she gathered their few belongings. Her mind raced. A map, with her quarters marked. Why? She was nobody. A widow. A refugee. Unless her mate's death. The border attack. What if it hadn't been random? The thought made her chest tighten, but she forced it down. Not now. Not in front of Maya. When they stepped into the corridor, Kael was waiting with 2 guards. Follow me, he said. They walked through the pack house in silence, the stone walls feeling suddenly oppressive. Every shadow seemed darker. Every corner felt like a threat. Rowan appeared at the top of a staircase, his tutor close behind. His eyes went wide when he saw them. Papa, where are they going? Somewhere safe, Kael said without breaking stride. But not now, Rowan. The boy's face crumpled, but Isla couldn't stop. Kael's pace was relentless. They descended another flight of stairs and passed through a reinforced door into a quieter wing. The air here felt thicker, protected. Kael stopped in front of a door and pushed it open. "You'll stay here. There's a guard posted at each end of the corridor. Do not leave without my permission." Isla stepped inside. The room was larger than their last. 2 beds, a sitting area, a window with heavy curtains already drawn. "What about Rowan?" she asked quietly. Kael's jaw tightened. "He's in the family wing, guarded." "And you?" His gaze snapped to hers, sharp and unreadable. "I'll be handling the interrogation." What did the rogue say? Nothing useful. Yet, his voice dropped. But he will. There was something cold in his tone. Something that reminded Isla exactly what kind of man stood before her. An alpha king. A warrior. A protector who would do whatever it took. "Stay here," Kael said. "I'll send word when it's safe." He turned to leave, but Isla's voice stopped him. "Kael." He froze. She'd never used his name before. "Thank you," she said softly, "for keeping us safe." His shoulders tensed, and for a moment, he didn't move. Then he looked back, his expression unreadable. "I protect what's mine." The door closed behind him, before she could ask what he meant. The hours crawled by. Isla tried to keep Maya occupied, coloring, storytelling, anything to keep her daughter from sensing the fear coiling in Isla's chest. But Maya was perceptive. "Mama, are the bad people coming here?" "No, sweetheart, the Alpha King won't let them." "Is that why we had to move?" "Yes." Maya climbed into Isla's lap, her small arms wrapping around her mother's neck. "I don't want anyone to hurt you." Isla's throat tightened. "No one will, I promise." But the words felt hollow. A knock came at the door just before nightfall. Isla opened it to find a young woman holding a tray of food. "The Alpha King sent this." "Thank you," Isla murmured, taking the tray. The woman hesitated. "He also said, he'll be here within the hour." Isla's pulse jumped. "Here?" The woman nodded and left without another word. Isla set the tray down, her hands unsteady. Why would Kael come here? She fed Maya and helped her change into her night clothes, her mind spinning. When the knock came again, her wolf stirred, recognizing him before she even opened the door. Kael stood in the corridor, his shirt streaked with dirt and something darker. Blood, maybe. His expression was hard, but his eyes were exhausted. "Is Maya asleep?" he asked quietly. Isla glanced back. Her daughter was curled in bed, her breathing slow and even. "Yes." "Good." He stepped inside and closed the door. "We need to talk." Her stomach tightened. "What did the rogue say?" "He's part of a group tracking refugees from the southern border." Kael's voice was low, controlled. "They're looking for someone. A woman. A widow." Isla's breath caught. "Why?" "I don't know yet. He wouldn't say." Kael's gaze locked on hers. "But the map he carried had your quarters marked, not the guest wing. Your specific room." Her knees went weak. "That doesn't make sense. I'm no one." "You're someone to them." He took a step closer. "Tell me everything about your mate's death, every detail." Isla's chest tightened. "He was on patrol. There was an ambush. Rogues, they said. He and 3 others were killed." "Did they recover the bodies?" "No." Her voice cracked. "They said the rogues burned them." Kael's jaw flexed. "Who told you this?" "A scout. From the Southern Patrol." "Do you remember his name?" Isla shook her head, her pulse hammering. "No, I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly." Kael exhaled slowly, his expression darkening. "I'm sending a team south. If your mate's death wasn't random." "Then what?" Isla whispered. "Then someone wanted him dead, and now they're looking for you." Her wolf stirred, restless and afraid. Why would they want me? I don't know. Kael's voice softened, just a fraction. But I'm gonna find out. Isla wrapped her arms around herself, her chest tight. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to keep my daughter safe. And I will. Kael's gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. You're under my protection now. No one gets to you without going through me. The weight of his words settled over her like a shield. Until we know what we're dealing with, Kael continued, I'm staying close. I'll be in the adjoining room. Isla's breath hitched. You're staying here? Yes. His voice was firm. I'm not leaving you unguarded. But Rowan is in the family wing with 4 guards and his tutor. He's safe. Kael's expression softened, just for a moment. And he asked about you. 3 times today. Isla's throat tightened. Is he all right? He's worried. He wanted to come see you, but I couldn't allow it. Kael paused. Not until I know the threat is contained. I understand. For a long moment they stood in silence, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. Then Kael's gaze dropped to her hand, the one she'd pressed to her chest, fingers trembling. You're afraid, he said quietly. Yes. Don't be. His voice was low, steady. I won't let anyone hurt you. Isla met his gaze, and something in his eyes made her wolf settle. Just a little. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care so much? Kael's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough. Because my son looks at you like you're the first light he's seen in 3 years. And because when I look at you... He stopped, his gaze dropping. What? Isla whispered. Kael's eyes lifted to hers, and the raw honesty in them made her chest ache. I feel something I thought I'd buried, he said quietly. And I don't know what to do with that. Isla couldn't breathe. Kael stepped back, his expression shuddering. Get some rest. I'll be next door if you need anything. He left before she could respond. Isla stood alone in the quiet room, her pulse racing, and her wolf restless beneath her skin. She didn't belong here, but Kael's words echoed in her mind. I protect what's mine. And for the first time since her mate died, she felt like maybe she could stop running. Isla woke before dawn, her body still tense from the night before. Kael's words echoed in her mind. I feel something I thought I'd buried. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing the confusion away. Maya stirred beside her, rolling over with a soft sigh, still asleep. Isla rose quietly and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. The room felt smaller in the gray pre-dawn light, the heavy curtains blocking out most of the world. She crossed to the window and pulled one edge back, just enough to see outside. The grounds were still. Mist clung to the grass. Guards moved in pairs along the outer walls. Safe. For now. The door to the adjoining room opened, and Isla turned. Kael stood in the doorway, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept. You're awake, he said quietly. I couldn't sleep. His gaze flicked to Maya, then back to Isla. Neither could I. For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Then Kael stepped into the room and closed the door softly behind him. I need to ask you something. Isla's pulse quickened. All right. Your mate? Kael's voice was careful, measured. What did he do before he joined the border patrol? She frowned. He was a tracker. He worked in logistics, supply routes mostly. Why? Did he ever mention anything unusual? Shipments that didn't make sense? Orders that seemed off? Isla's stomach tightened. Not that I remember. He didn't talk much about his work. Kael's jaw flexed. The rogue we captured. He finally talked. He said they're looking for someone who knows where something was hidden. Hidden? Isla's voice came out sharper than she intended. What are you talking about? I don't know yet, but he mentioned your mate by name. Kael's gaze locked on hers. He said your mate took something, and they think you know where it is. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. That's impossible, Isla whispered. He didn't take anything. He wouldn't. Are you sure? Yes, but even as she said it, doubt curled through her chest. Her mate had been quiet in those last few weeks. Distracted. She'd thought it was stress from the patrols, the constant threat of rogues. But what if it had been something else? Kael took a step closer, his voice dropping. If he hid something, if he left you anything, you need to tell me. Now. Isla shook her head, her hands trembling. There's nothing. We lost everything when he died. The pack confiscated our home. I only kept what I could carry. What did you keep? She hesitated, then crossed to the small bag in the corner. Her hands shook as she pulled out the few items inside. Maya's clothes. A worn blanket. A wooden box no bigger than her palm. Kael's eyes fixed on the box. What's that? Just memories. Isla's throat tightened. Letters. A few things he gave me. Open it. She hesitated, her wolf bristling at the command in his voice. But she opened the latch. Inside were 3 folded letters, a pressed flower, and a small carved wolf, the first gift her mate had ever given her. Kael reached out slowly, his fingers brushing the edge of one of the letters. May I? Isla nodded, her chest tight. He unfolded the first letter carefully, his eyes scanning the words. Then he went still. What? Isla asked, her pulse hammering. Kael didn't answer. He unfolded the second letter, then the third, his expression darkening with each one. Kael, Isla said, her voice rising. What is it? He looked up, his gaze hard. These aren't love letters. Her breath caught. What do you mean? They're coded. Kael's voice was tight, controlled. Supply routes, dates, locations. He tapped the third letter. This one mentions a shipment that was supposed to be destroyed. But it wasn't. Isla's knees went weak. No, that can't be right. I've read those letters 100 times. They're just... Look at the first letter of every third word, Kael said, holding it up. It spells out coordinates. She stared at the page, her vision blurring. He was right. I didn't know, Isla whispered. I swear, I didn't know. Kael's expression softened, just a fraction. I believe you. Then why didn't he tell me? Her voice cracked. Why did he hide this from me? Because he was trying to protect you. Kael set the letters down carefully. If anyone found out what he knew, you would have been in danger. And now I am anyway, Isla said bitterly. Yes. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her chest tight. What was he hiding? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Kael crouched in front of her, his gaze steady. And I'm going to keep you safe while I do. Isla looked at him, this man who barely knew her, who had every reason to send her away, and saw only certainty in his eyes. Why? She asked softly. Why do you care? Kael's jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't answer. Then he reached out slowly and took her hand, his grip firm and warm. Because my son trusts you, he said quietly. And I haven't seen him trust anyone in 3 years. Isla's throat tightened. And because... Kael's voice dropped, rough and raw. When I lost Lena, I thought I'd never feel anything again. I buried it. All of it. The grief, the guilt, the anger. Kael, but then you walked into my hall. He continued, his gaze locked on hers. And my son smiled. And I felt something shift. Isla couldn't breathe. I don't know what this is, Kael said. I don't know if it's the bond my wolf keeps insisting is there or if it's just something I'm not ready to name. But I can't ignore it. Her pulse hammered in her throat. I'm still grieving. I know. I don't know if I'm ready for anything. I know that too. Kael's thumb brushed over her knuckles, slow and deliberate. But I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just asking you to let me keep you safe. Isla's wolf stirred, something warm and aching curling through her chest. And if you ever are ready, Kael's voice softened. I'll be here. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded, her throat too tight for words. Kael released her hand and stood, his expression shuddering back into the controlled mask she'd come to recognize. I'm sending a team to the coordinates in the letters, he said. If we find what your mate hid, we'll know why they're after you. And if you don't, then we deal with that when it comes. His gaze held hers. But you're not leaving this wing until I know you're safe. What about Rowan? Kael's expression softened. He can visit, under guard, if you're willing. Isla's chest eased, just a little. I'd like that. Good. He turned toward the door, then paused. Isla. Yes? He looked back, and the exhaustion in his eyes made her chest ache. When this is over, when you're safe, I'd like to tell you about Lena. Isla's breath caught. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. His voice was quiet, honest. Because you told Rowan about your mate, and I think I need to do the same. She nodded slowly. All right. Kael's gaze lingered on her face for one more moment. Then he stepped into the adjoining room and closed the door. Isla sat in the quiet, her hands still trembling, her mind spinning. Her mate had been hiding something dangerous enough to get him killed, and now she was tangled in it, along with her daughter. But Kael's words echoed in her mind. I'll be here. And for the first time in 6 months, Isla felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't facing this alone. Maya stirred, her eyes blinking open. Mama? Isla crossed to the bed and pulled her daughter close. I'm here, sweetheart. Is everything okay? Isla pressed a kiss to her hair, her throat tight. Yes. Everything's going to be okay. She didn't know if that was true, but she needed to believe it. For Maya. And maybe for herself. Isla spent the next 2 days in the secured wing, watching Maya color at the small table while her own thoughts spun in endless circles. Kael came and went, his visits brief and tense. He brought updates, carefully worded, stripped of detail, and left before she could ask the questions that kept her awake at night. Rowan visited once, escorted by 2 guards and his tutor. He'd hugged Isla fiercely, then sat on the floor with Maya and built towers out of wooden blocks. When it was time to leave, he'd look back at Isla with those 2 serious eyes. You're still going to be here tomorrow, right? I'm not going anywhere, she'd promised. But the fear in his voice had stayed with her long after he left. Now, as the sun set on the 3rd day, Isla stood at the window and watched the guards patrol the grounds. Her wolf was restless. Pacing beneath her skin, something was coming. The door to the adjoining room opened, and Kael stepped through. His expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. We found something, he said. Isla's pulse jumped. What? The coordinates in your mate's letters led to a supply depot on the southern border. Abandoned, but there were traces of wolfsbane, stockpiled in quantities that would take down an entire pack. Her blood ran cold. Why would anyone? Because someone's planning an attack. Kael's voice was flat, controlled. And your mate found out. He hid the evidence to buy time. Isla's knees went weak, and she gripped the back of the chair. He was trying to stop them. Yes, and they killed him for it. Her throat tightened, grief and rage twisting together in her chest. Then why come after me? Because they think he told you where the rest of the shipment is. Kael's gaze locked on hers. And they're running out of time. I don't know anything, Isla whispered. I swear. I know. His voice softened, just a fraction. But they don't. Before Isla could respond, a sharp howl split the air outside. Kael's head snapped toward the window, his entire body going tense. Another howl answered. Closer this time. Get away from the window, Kael said, his voice dropping into command. Now. Isla backed away, her heart hammering. Kael crossed to the door and yanked it open. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. What's happening? They're here. His eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. Stay with Maya. Don't leave this room. He was gone before she could answer. Isla slammed the door shut and threw the bolt, her hands shaking. Maya looked up from her coloring, her eyes wide. Mama? Come here, sweetheart. Isla pulled her daughter close, her wolf snarling beneath her skin. Outside, the howls grew louder. Closer. Then, the sound of breaking glass echoed down the corridor. Isla's breath stopped. Footsteps, fast and heavy, pounded past the door. Shouts. Snarls. The crash of bodies hitting walls. Maya buried her face in Isla's chest, trembling. It's all right, Isla whispered, even though her own heart was racing. The Alpha King will keep us safe. But the sounds of fighting grew louder, and Isla's wolf clawed at her control. Then the door shook. Once, hard, as something slammed into it from the outside. Isla scrambled backward, pulling Maya with her, her eyes locked on the bolt. It held. Another impact. The wood splintered near the hinges. Isla's wolf surged, and she let it, just enough to sharpen her senses, strengthen her grip. If that door came down, she would fight. For Maya. For herself. For the life Kael had promised to protect. The door shuddered again, and then went still. Silence. Isla's breath came in short gasps, her body coiled tight. Then a low, familiar voice came through the wood. Isla, it's me. Kael. She crossed to the door on trembling legs and threw the bolt. Kael stood in the corridor, blood streaked across his jaw, his shirt torn at the shoulder. His eyes were still gold, his wolf barely leashed. Behind him, 2 guards stood over the body of a rogue, throat torn open, eyes staring at nothing. Isla's stomach turned, but she forced herself to look at Kael. Are you hurt? No. His voice was rough, strained. But we need to move. Now. Where? The family wing. It's reinforced. They breached the outer corridor, but they won't get through the inner defenses. Isla turned and scooped Maya into her arms. Her daughter clung to her, silent and shaking. Kael led them down the corridor at a near run, 2 guards flanking them. The pack house felt different now, darker, more dangerous. Every shadow held a threat. They descended a narrow staircase and passed through a reinforced door into a quieter wing. Rowan was waiting in the sitting room, his tutor beside him. His face lit up when he saw Isla, and he ran toward her. You're okay, he breathed, his voice breaking with relief. I'm okay, Isla said softly, shifting Maya to one hip so she could touch Rowan's shoulder. We're all okay. Kael crouched beside his son, his hand firm on Rowan's back. I need you to stay here with Isla and Maya. Can you do that? Rowan nodded, his eyes wide and serious. Kael's gaze lifted to Isla. There are 6 guards on this floor. The door locks from the inside. Don't open it unless you hear my voice. Where are you going? Isla asked, her chest tight. To finish this. His eyes were still gold, his wolf still riding him hard. Isla reached out before she could stop herself and touched his arm. Be careful. Kael's gaze locked on hers, and for a moment the hardness in his expression softened. I will. Then he was gone, The hours that followed were the longest of Isla's life. She sat with the children in the sitting room, keeping her voice calm, her movements steady, even as her wolf paced and snarled beneath her skin. Maya fell asleep, curled against her side. Rowan sat close, his small hand wrapped around Isla's. "Is Papa going to be okay?" he whispered. "Yes," Isla said firmly. "He's the Alpha King. He's strong." "But Mama was strong too," Rowan said, his voice breaking. "And she still died." Isla's throat tightened, and she pulled him closer. "Your Papa is coming back, I promise." She didn't know if she had the right to make that promise. But she needed Rowan to believe it. The door opened just before dawn. Isla's head snapped up, her body tensing. Kael stepped into the room, his face streaked with blood and dirt, his shirt torn and stained. But his eyes were clear, human again. "It's over," he said quietly. Isla exhaled, relief flooding through her so fast it made her dizzy. Rowan scrambled to his feet and ran to his father, throwing his dollar, arms around Kael's waist. Kael caught him, holding him close, his eyes closing for just a moment. "You're okay," Rowan whispered. "You're okay." "I'm okay," Kael murmured, his voice rough. "I told you I would be." Isla stood slowly, careful not to wake Maya, and crossed to where they stood. Kael's gaze lifted to hers, and something in his expression made her chest ache. "Thank you," she said softly, "for keeping us safe." Kael reached out slowly and touched her face, just his fingertips brushing her cheek. "I told you," he said quietly. "I protect what's mine." Isla's breath caught, her wolf settling beneath his touch. Rowan looked up at them, his eyes wide and hopeful. "Does this mean Isla can stay?" he asked. Kael's gaze never left Isla's face. "If she wants to." Isla's throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. She thought of her mate, the life she'd lost, the grief that still sat heavy in her chest. But she also thought of Rowan's smile, Maya's laughter, the way Kael looked at her, like she mattered, like she was worth protecting. "I want to," she whispered. Kael's hand slid to the back of her neck, gentle and sure, and he pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "Then stay," he murmured. And for the first time in 6 months, Isla felt like maybe, just maybe, she could finally stop running. The morning light broke soft and golden through the high windows of the family wing, casting long shadows across the stone floor where Isla sat, with Maya still curled in her lap. Rowan had fallen asleep against Kael's shoulder, one small hand clutching his father's torn shirt. Kael's eyes met hers across the quiet room, and something passed between them, something that made her chest ache and her wolf settle all at once. "You should rest," Kael said quietly, his voice rough from the night's fighting. "So should you." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "I will, soon." But neither of them moved. The silence stretched between them, comfortable now. Safe. After a long moment, Kael shifted carefully and lifted Rowan into his arms. The boy stirred but didn't wake, his face peaceful in sleep. "Come on," Kael murmured. "Let's get them to bed." Isla followed him down the corridor to a suite of rooms she'd never seen before. Kael pushed open a door with his shoulder, revealing a bedroom with 2 small beds side by side. "This was supposed to be Rowan's room when he was younger," Kael said quietly. "But he never wanted to sleep alone. The other bed's never been used." Isla's throat tightened, as she understood what he was offering. She carried Maya to the second bed and tucked her in gently, smoothing the blanket over her daughter's small shoulders. Across the room, Kael did the same with Rowan, his movements careful and tender. When both children were settled, Kael gestured toward the door. Isla followed him into the adjoining sitting room, her pulse quickening. He closed the door softly behind them. "I meant what I said," Kael began, his voice low. "You can stay, as long as you want." "As a guest?" Isla asked quietly. Kael's gaze locked on hers. "No, not as a guest." Her breath caught. "I'm asking you to stay as part of this family," Kael continued, taking a step closer. "Rowan needs you. He trusts you. And I—" He stopped, his jaw flexing. "You what?" Isla whispered. "I can't pretend anymore." His voice was rough, honest. "I can't pretend I don't feel this, whatever it is." Isla's wolf stirred, warm and aching beneath her skin. "But I'm still grieving," she said, her voice breaking. "I loved my mate. I still do." "I know." Kael's expression softened. "And I loved Lena. I still carry her with me every day." "Then how can we—" "Because they're gone," Kael said gently. "And we're still here. And maybe they'd want us to keep living." Tears stung Isla's eyes, and she looked away. "I feel like I'm betraying him." "You're not." Kael reached out slowly and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "You're surviving. You're building something new. That's not betrayal. That's courage." She looked up at him, her vision blurred with tears. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "Then we go slow," Kael said. "As slow as you need." "And if I'm never ready," his thumb brushed over her knuckles, gentle and sure, "then I'll still be here. As your friend. As Rowan's father. As the man who promised to keep you safe." Isla's chest tightened, something warm and fragile breaking open inside her. "I want to try," she said softly. "I'm scared, but I want to try." Kael's expression shifted, relief and something deeper flooding his features. He lifted her hand slowly and pressed it against his chest, right over his heart. "Feel that?" he murmured. She nodded, her palm warming against the steady rhythm beneath his skin. "That's what you do to me," Kael said quietly. "Every time you walk into a room, every time you smile at my son, every time you look at me like I'm not just a king." Isla's breath caught, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm not asking you to forget your mate," Kael continued, his voice rough. "I'm just asking you to let me stand beside you, to build something new. Together." She couldn't speak, so she just nodded, her throat too tight for words. Kael's hand came up slowly, cupping her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I'll honor your past," he promised. "And I'll protect your future, you and Maya both." "And Rowan," Isla whispered. "And Rowan." A smile ghosted across his lips. "He already thinks you're staying. He told me yesterday he wants Maya to be his sister." Isla's chest ached, warmth flooding through her. "He said that?" "He did." Kael's gaze held hers, steady and sure. "So what do you say, Isla? Will you stay? Not as a guest, not as a refugee, but as part of this family?" She thought of her mate, the life they'd built, the love they'd shared, the way he'd looked at her on their last morning together. And she thought of Maya's laughter, Rowan's smile, the way Kael's hand felt warm and solid against her skin. Her mate was gone, but she was still here, and maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to keep living. "Yes," Isla whispered. "I'll stay." Kael's eyes closed for just a moment, relief washing over his face. Then he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Isla let herself lean into him, let herself feel safe. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet. When Kael finally pulled back, his expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. "There's something I want to show you." He led her through the pack house, down corridors she'd never walked before until they reached a small door at the end of a quiet hallway. Kael pushed it open, revealing a private garden bathed in morning light. "Lena loved this place," he said quietly. "She used to come here when things got too heavy." Isla stepped inside, her breath catching. The garden was simple but beautiful, flowering vines climbing the stone walls, a small fountain in the center, benches tucked beneath the shade of an old oak tree. "After she died," Kael continued, "I couldn't come here. It hurt too much." Isla looked at him, her chest tight. "But I want to share it with you," Kael said, his voice soft. "Because I think she'd want this place to be filled with life again." Tears stung Isla's eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He reached out and took her hand. "I'm sure." They sat together on one of the benches. The morning sun warming their skin, the sound of the fountain, a gentle murmur in the background. "Tell me about him," Kael said quietly. "Your mate." Isla's throat tightened, but she nodded. "His name was Dane. He was kind, patient. He made me laugh even when things were hard. He sounds like a good man." "He was." Isla's voice cracked. "He deserved better than what happened to him." Kael's hand tightened around hers. "He did. But he'd be proud of you, of how you've protected Maya, of how strong you've been." "I don't feel strong." "You are." Kael's gaze held hers. "You're the strongest person I know." Isla smiled through her tears, and Kael reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair back from her face. "We're gonna be all right," he murmured. "All of us." "I hope so. I know so." And when he leaned in and pressed his forehead to hers, Isla closed her eyes and let herself believe it. They sat together as the sun climbed higher, their hands entwined, the garden quiet and peaceful around them. Inside the pack house, Rowan and Maya were still asleep, safe and warm. And for the first time since her mate died, Isla felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd found her way home. Not the home she'd lost, but a new one. A place where grief and hope could exist together. Where the past could be honored and the future could still unfold. Where a lonely boy could smile again. And where a widow could learn to live, and maybe even love, once more.